The clock on the hospital wall showed 6:47 a.m. when Dr. Amelia Richardson finally finished her shift. Her feet hurt from standing for 12 straight hours, and all she wanted was to get home to her two kids before they woke up. But first, she needed to stop at the grocery store. The fridge at home was nearly empty, and her 7-year-old son would definitely ask for his favorite cereal at breakfast. She pulled into the parking lot of Henderson's Grocery, the same store she had been shopping at for the past 5 years. The morning air was crisp, and only a few other cars were in the lot. Early morning shopping was always peaceful, and she liked avoiding the crowds. Still wearing her blue medical scrubs from the hospital, Dr. Richardson grabbed a shopping cart and walked through the automatic doors. The store was quiet except for the soft music playing overhead and the hum of the refrigerators. A few other shoppers moved quietly through the aisles, and the cashiers were just starting their morning routines. She headed straight to the dairy section first. Her daughter loved chocolate milk, and they were completely out at home. As she reached for a gallon of regular milk and a smaller container of chocolate milk, she noticed someone watching her from the end of the aisle. A tall man in casual clothes stood there staring at her with an intense look on his face. She had seen him around town before but didn't know his name. What she didn't know was that this man was Derek Manning, a police officer who had been with the local department for 15 years. He wasn't working today, just doing his own shopping. But something about seeing Dr. Richardson made him suspicious. Dr. Richardson tried to ignore the staring and moved on to the produce section. She needed fresh fruit for the kids' lunch boxes and some vegetables for dinner. As she carefully selected apples and bananas, she could feel eyes on her again. The same man had followed her and was now standing just 20 feet away, pretending to look at oranges but clearly watching her every move. This made her uncomfortable, but she tried to stay focused on her shopping. She had experienced this kind of unwanted attention before, and she knew the best thing to do was just finish her shopping and leave. She picked up some carrots and lettuce, placing them gently in her cart. That's when the man approached her directly. "Excuse me," he said in a loud voice that made other shoppers turn their heads. "What are you doing here?" Dr. Richardson looked up, surprised by the aggressive tone. "I'm sorry, what do you mean?" she asked politely. "I mean, what are you really doing in this store?" Manning demanded, stepping closer to her cart. "You don't look like you belong in this neighborhood." The comment hit her like a punch to the stomach. She had heard words like this before, but it never stopped hurting. She took a deep breath and kept her voice calm and professional. "I'm shopping for groceries just like everyone else," she replied. "I live here in this community, and I shop here regularly." Manning's face grew more serious. "I need to see some identification," he said firmly. Dr. Richardson felt her heart start beating faster. This was escalating quickly, and she couldn't understand why. "I don't understand why you need to see my ID for grocery shopping," she said, still trying to remain calm. "Are you a store employee?" "That's not your concern," Manning snapped back. "I'm asking for your identification, and you need to show it to me right now." Other shoppers were starting to notice the commotion. An elderly woman pushing her cart stopped and looked concerned. A young father with his toddler quickly moved to a different aisle, clearly wanting to avoid whatever was happening. Dr. Richardson realized this situation was becoming dangerous. She slowly reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. If this was going to continue, she wanted to have a record of what was happening. "I'm going to record this conversation," she said clearly, holding up her phone. "I have the right to know why you're demanding my identification when I'm just shopping." Manning's eyes flashed with anger when he saw the phone. "Put that phone away right now," he shouted, his voice echoing through the store. "I have the right to record this," Dr. Richardson replied, her voice still steady despite her racing heart. "You're harassing me for no reason, and I want to document what's happening." The store manager, Patricia Williams, heard the shouting from her office and quickly walked over to see what was wrong. She immediately recognized Dr. Richardson as one of their regular customers, someone who had been shopping there for years, without any problems. "Is everything okay here?" Patricia asked, looking between the two people. "This woman is acting suspicious," Manning declared, pointing at Dr. Richardson. "She doesn't belong in this neighborhood, and she's refusing to cooperate." Patricia looked confused. "Sir, I know this customer very well. Dr. Richardson has been shopping here for years. She's a doctor at the local hospital and lives just a few blocks away. But Manning wasn't listening to reason. His face was getting red and his hands were shaking with anger. I don't care what you say. She's suspicious and she needs to show me her identification right now. Dr. Richardson continued, recording, speaking clearly into her phone. My name is Dr. Amelia Richardson. I'm being harassed while grocery shopping by a man who won't identify himself, but is demanding my identification. The store manager has confirmed that I'm a regular customer here. This made Manning even more furious. I told you to put that phone away, he screamed. What happened next shocked everyone in the store. Manning reached under his jacket and pulled out a gun, pointing it directly at Dr. Richardson. Get on the ground right now, he yelled, his weapon aimed at her chest. The entire store seemed to freeze. The elderly woman who had been watching gasped and backed away quickly. Other shoppers immediately pulled out their own phones and started recording the unbelievable scene. Children started crying, and people began moving toward the exits. Dr. Richardson's hands were shaking, but she kept her phone recording. Her medical training had taught her to stay calm in emergencies, and she knew that staying calm might save her life. Please put the weapon down, she said in a steady voice. I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just shopping for groceries. Patricia immediately ran to the customer service desk and called 911. I need police here right away, she said into the phone. Someone has drawn a weapon in our store and they're threatening a customer. The situation was completely out of control. A trained police officer had drawn his weapon on an innocent woman who was simply buying milk and vegetables for her family. Other customers were terrified. Parents were grabbing their children, and the peaceful morning shopping trip had turned into a nightmare. Manning kept his weapon pointed at Dr. Richardson, shouting commands at her while she tried to remain calm. She slowly placed her shopping cart between herself and the gun, hoping it might provide some protection. I'm a doctor, she said clearly, hoping someone else in the store could hear her. I just finished a 12-hour shift at the hospital, and I'm buying groceries for my children. I have done nothing wrong. The store's security cameras were recording everything from multiple angles. Every word, every movement, every second of this unjustified confrontation was being captured on video. This evidence would soon become crucial in proving exactly what had happened. Within minutes, the sound of sirens could be heard approaching the store. Help was coming, but those few minutes felt like hours to everyone inside. Dr. Richardson continued to document everything, knowing that this record might be the only thing that could protect her from false accusations later. The other shoppers, who were recording, also kept their cameras rolling. They couldn't believe what they were seeing, but they knew their videos might be important evidence. In today's world, everyone understood the importance of documenting incidents like this. Manning seemed to realize that his actions were being recorded by multiple people, but he didn't lower his weapon. He was committed to his course of action, even though it was clearly wrong and dangerous. The store manager continued talking to the 911 operator, giving them a detailed description of what was happening. She emphasized that Dr. Richardson was a well-known and respected customer who had never caused any problems in the past. As the sirens got louder, everyone in the store waited anxiously to see what would happen next. Dr. Richardson continued to stay calm, even with a weapon pointed at her. Her years of medical training had prepared her to handle high-stress situations, and she knew that keeping her composure was essential. The peaceful grocery store had become the scene of a dangerous confrontation that would soon change many lives, forever. What had started as a simple shopping trip for milk and cereal had turned into an incident that would be talked about for months to come. The automatic doors of the store opened, and the sound of heavy footsteps announced that help had finally arrived. The first police car pulled into the parking lot with its lights flashing but no siren. The officers inside had been told that there was a dangerous situation at the grocery store, but they didn't know all the details yet. What they found when they walked through those automatic doors would surprise them more than anything they had seen in their careers. Sergeant Maria Santos stepped through the entrance first. She was a 20-year veteran of the police force, someone who had seen almost everything during her time in law enforcement. Behind her came Officer David Chen, a newer officer who had been on the force for just 3 years but had already earned respect for his calm approach to difficult situations. The scene inside the store was unlike anything they expected. They saw Manning, someone they recognized as a fellow officer, standing in the produce section with his weapon drawn and pointed at a woman in medical scrubs. Other customers were pressed against the walls, many of them holding their phones up and recording everything. Sergeant Santos immediately assessed the situation. Her years of experience told her that something was very wrong here. She could see that the woman being threatened appeared calm and was not acting in any way that would justify having a weapon pointed at her. "Derek, what's going on here?" "Sergeant," Santos called out in a firm but controlled voice. Manning turned his head slightly but kept his gun aimed at Dr. Richardson. "This woman was acting suspicious," he said. "She wouldn't show me her identification, and she started recording me when I tried to question her." Sergeant Santos looked around the store and saw the shopping cart next to Dr. Richardson, filled with ordinary groceries. She saw the medical scrubs that clearly identified her as a healthcare worker. She saw the other customers who looked terrified and confused. Nothing about this scene made sense. "Derek, I need you to lower your weapon. Right now," Sergeant Santos said firmly. "This woman doesn't appear to be a threat to anyone." Officer Chen had moved to a position where he could see the entire situation clearly. He noticed that Dr. Richardson was still holding her phone, recording everything that was happening. Her hands were shaking, but she wasn't making any threatening moves. "Sir, I'm going to need you to put your weapon away," Officer Chen said to Manning. "We can sort this out without anyone getting hurt." But Manning wasn't listening to his fellow officers. His face was red with anger and he seemed convinced that he was in the right. "She's suspicious," he insisted. "Look at her. She doesn't belong in this neighborhood." Dr. Richardson finally spoke up, her voice steady despite the fear she was feeling. "Officers, my name is Dr. Amelia Richardson. I work at the local hospital and I've been shopping at this store for 5 years. I was just buying groceries when this man approached me and started demanding my identification for no reason." Patricia, the store manager, quickly approached the officers. "Officers, Dr. Richardson is telling the truth. She's one of our regular customers. She shops here all the time and she's never caused any problems. I don't understand why this is happening." Sergeant Santos was beginning to understand the situation better. She had seen cases like this before, and she knew that Manning's behavior was completely inappropriate. No officer should draw their weapon on someone who was simply shopping for groceries. "Derek, you need to holster your weapon immediately," she commanded. "This is not an appropriate use of force." Manning finally seemed to realize that his fellow officers were not supporting his actions. He slowly lowered his weapon but didn't put it away completely. "You don't understand," he said. "She was acting suspicious." "What exactly did she do that was suspicious?" Officer Chen asked. "From what I can see, she was shopping for groceries just like any other customer." Manning struggled to give a clear answer. She just didn't look like she belonged here," he said weakly. The other customers in the store were still recording everything on their phones. They had witnessed the entire confrontation from the beginning, and they could see that Dr. Richardson had done nothing wrong. An elderly woman who had been shopping spoke up. "Officer, I saw the whole thing," she said. "That woman was just shopping peacefully when this man started bothering her. She didn't do anything wrong." A young father who had been in the store with his child also stepped forward. "I recorded some of it too," he said, holding up his phone. "She was just getting milk and vegetables when he started harassing her." Sergeant Santos realized that there were multiple witnesses and recordings of the incident. The evidence was clear that Manning had acted inappropriately. She made a decision that would change everything. "Derek, I need you to put your weapon away and step back," she ordered. "You're going to need to explain your actions to our supervisor." At that moment, another police car arrived outside. Captain James Mitchell, the precinct commander, had been called to the scene after the 911 dispatcher realized that an off-duty officer was involved in the incident. He walked into the store and immediately saw the tense situation. Captain Mitchell was known throughout the department as a fair but strict leader. He had been working to improve community relations and had zero tolerance for officers who abused their authority. When he saw Manning with his weapon still in his hand and Dr. Richardson clearly distressed, he knew exactly what had happened. "What's the situation here?" Captain Mitchell asked Sergeant Santos. "Captain, Officer Manning drew his weapon on this woman while she was shopping," Sergeant Santos reported. "Multiple witnesses say she was doing nothing wrong, just buying groceries." "Captain." Mitchell looked at Dr. Richardson, who was still holding her phone and recording. "Ma'am, are you injured?" he asked with genuine concern. "No, sir, I'm not injured," Dr. Richardson replied. "But I am very shaken up. I was just trying to buy milk for my children when this started." The captain then turned to Manning. "Derek, put your weapon away and explain to me what happened here." Manning finally holstered his gun, but he still seemed angry. "Captain, this woman was acting suspicious. She wouldn't show me her identification, and when I tried to question her, she became uncooperative." "What made her suspicious?" "Captain," Mitchell asked. Manning struggled to answer, just as he had with the other officers. She didn't look like she belonged in this neighborhood." Captain Mitchell felt his heart sink. He had heard explanations like this before, and he knew what they really meant. This was exactly the kind of behavior that he had been working to eliminate from his department. "Derek, you're off duty," the captain said firmly. "You had no authority to demand identification from anyone, and there is absolutely no justification for drawing your weapon on someone who was shopping for groceries." Dr. Richardson's husband, attorney Michael Richardson, arrived at the store after receiving a frantic phone call from his wife. He had rushed over immediately, leaving his own work to make sure she was safe. When he walked into the store and saw police officers everywhere, his worst fears were confirmed. "Amelia, are you okay?" he asked, rushing to his wife's side. "I'm okay, Michael," she replied, though her voice was shaking. "This man pulled a gun on me while I was shopping." "Michael." Richardson looked around the store and quickly understood what had happened. As an attorney, he had handled cases involving police misconduct before, but he never thought it would happen to his own family. "Officers, I'm attorney Michael Richardson," he said professionally. "I want to make sure that proper procedures are being followed here." Captain Mitchell nodded respectfully. "Mr. Richardson, we're conducting a full investigation of this incident. Your wife appears to have done nothing wrong, and we're taking this very seriously." Patricia, the store manager, approached the group with a tablet in her hands. "Captain, I have the security footage from our cameras," she said. "It shows the entire incident from multiple angles." "We'll need to review that footage immediately," Captain Mitchell said. "Can you show it to us now?" They all gathered around Patricia's tablet as she played back the security footage. The video clearly showed Dr. Richardson shopping peacefully, Manning approaching her aggressively, and the entire confrontation that followed. There was no doubt about what had happened. The footage showed Manning drawing his weapon on a woman who was simply reaching for milk and vegetables. It showed Dr. Richardson remaining calm and professional throughout the entire incident. It showed other customers backing away in fear and pulling out their phones to record. Captain Mitchell watched the footage with a grim expression on his face. He had seen enough evidence to know that Manning had committed serious violations of department policy and possibly criminal acts as well. "This is completely unacceptable," Captain Mitchell said after watching the video. "Derek, you will be suspended immediately pending a full investigation." But the captain knew that suspension wasn't enough. The evidence was so clear and the violation so serious that immediate action was required. He made a decision that surprised everyone in the store. "Actually, Derek, based on what I've seen here today, your employment with this department is terminated effective immediately," Captain Mitchell announced. "This behavior is inexcusable and has no place in law enforcement." The store fell silent. No one had expected such swift action. Dr. Richardson looked surprised, and even Manning seemed shocked by the announcement. "You can't do this," Manning protested. "I was just doing my job." "No, Derek, you were not doing your job," Captain Mitchell replied firmly. "You were harassing an innocent citizen, and you endangered everyone in this store by drawing your weapon without justification." Officer Chen stepped forward to escort Manning out of the store. "Sir, I need you to come with me," he said professionally. As Manning was led away, the other customers in the store began to relax for the first time since the incident began. The immediate danger was over, but the impact of what had happened would be felt for a long time to come. The silence in the grocery store was broken only by the sound of Manning's footsteps as Officer Chen escorted him toward the exit. Everyone who had witnessed the incident was still trying to process what had just happened. Captain Mitchell's decision to fire Manning on the spot was unprecedented, and nobody knew quite how to react. Dr. Richardson stood near her shopping cart, still holding her phone. Her hands had stopped shaking, but she could feel her heart still beating fast from the stress of the situation. She looked at her husband, Michael, who was standing protectively beside her, and then at Captain Mitchell, who was watching Manning leave the store. "Captain," Dr. Richardson said quietly, "I want to thank you for taking action so quickly. I was terrified that nothing would be done about this." Captain Mitchell turned to face her, and she could see the genuine concern in his eyes. "Dr. Richardson, what happened to you today should never happen to anyone. That officer's behavior was completely wrong, and it goes against everything our department stands for." The other customers in the store were slowly starting to move around again, but many of them were still recording with their phones. They had just witnessed something that rarely happened in situations like this: immediate accountability. Usually, incidents involving police officers took months or even years to resolve, but this had been handled in minutes. Michael Richardson, as an attorney, was impressed by Captain Mitchell's swift action, but he also knew that more would need to be done. "Captain, while I appreciate your quick response, we need to make sure that proper procedures are followed from here. This incident needs to be fully documented and investigated." "Absolutely," Captain Mitchell agreed. "We'll be conducting a complete investigation, and all the evidence will be preserved. The security footage, the witness statements, and the recordings from other customers will all be part of the official record." Patricia, the store manager, was still holding her tablet with the security footage. "Captain, I want to make sure you have copies of all our camera recordings from today. We have 6 different cameras that captured different angles of what happened. We'll need all of that," Captain Mitchell replied. "This case will be thoroughly documented." Outside the store, more police cars were arriving. Word had spread quickly through the department that something serious had happened involving one of their officers. Sergeant Santos had called for additional backup, not because there was still danger, but because they needed to properly secure the scene and gather all the evidence. Detective Lisa Harper arrived within 10 minutes of being called. She was known throughout the department for her thorough investigations and her ability to handle sensitive cases. Captain Mitchell had specifically requested her because he knew this incident would require careful attention to detail. "Captain, what do we have here?" Detective Harper asked as she entered the store. Captain Mitchell briefed her on the situation while Dr. Richardson and her husband listened. "Detective, this is a clear case of abuse of power and potentially criminal behavior. Officer Manning drew his weapon on Dr. Richardson without any justification while she was shopping." Detective Harper looked around the store and saw the other customers who were still there, many of them eager to give their statements about what they had witnessed. "I'll need to interview everyone who saw what happened," she said, "and I'll need to review all the video evidence." The elderly woman who had been shopping earlier approached Detective Harper. "Officer, I saw the whole thing from the beginning," she said. "That poor woman didn't do anything wrong. She was just getting milk when that man started bothering her." The young father who had been in the store with his child also came forward. "I have video of part of it on my phone," he offered. "I started recording when I heard the yelling." Detective Harper began taking statements from all the witnesses, while Captain Mitchell continued talking with Dr. Richardson and her husband. The evidence was overwhelming. Every single person who had witnessed the incident confirmed that Dr. Richardson had done nothing wrong. Meanwhile, news of the incident was already spreading beyond the grocery store. Several customers had posted videos on social media, and local news stations were starting to pick up the story. This was the kind of incident that usually sparked community outrage and protests, but something different was happening this time. Instead of the usual pattern of an incident followed by weeks of demands for justice, people were seeing immediate accountability. Captain Mitchell's decision to fire Manning on the spot was already being shared online, and the community's reaction was one of surprise and cautious hope. Dr. Richardson's phone had been buzzing with calls and messages from friends and colleagues who had seen the videos online. Her sister called from across town, worried and wanting to make sure she was okay. Her colleagues from the hospital were sending messages of support. "Amelia, the whole city is going to know about this within hours," Michael told his wife. "Are you prepared for that kind of attention?" Dr. Richardson thought about it for a moment. She had never wanted to be in the spotlight, but she realized that this incident could be important for other people who might face similar situations. "If speaking about this can help prevent it from happening to someone else, then I'm willing to do it," she said. Captain Mitchell overheard their conversation. "Dr. Richardson, I want you to know that our department will support you completely. What happened today was wrong, and we're going to make sure everyone knows that this kind of behavior is not acceptable." Just then, Police Chief Sandra Williams arrived at the store. She had rushed over as soon as she heard about the incident involving one of her officers. Chief Williams had been working hard to build trust between the police department and the EE community, and she knew that incidents like this could destroy years of progress. "Captain Mitchell briefed me on the situation," Chief Williams said as she surveyed the scene. Captain Mitchell explained everything that had happened, showing her the security footage and introducing her to Dr. Richardson and the witnesses. Chief Williams listened carefully, asking questions and taking notes. After reviewing all the evidence, Chief Williams made her own statement. "Dr. Richardson, on behalf of the entire police department, I want to apologize for what happened to you today. This officer's actions do not represent our values or our commitment to serving this community." She then turned to address everyone in the store. "I want everyone here to know that this incident will be fully investigated and appropriate action will be taken. Officer Manning's termination is just the beginning of our response." The crowd of customers who had gathered to listen seemed impressed by the chief's words. They had expected excuses or delays, but instead, they were seeing swift action and genuine accountability. Detective Harper finished collecting statements from all the witnesses and reviewing the security footage. The evidence was so clear that there was no doubt about what had happened. Manning had committed serious violations that could result in criminal charges. "Chief Williams," Detective Harper reported, "the evidence in this case is overwhelming. We have multiple witnesses, clear video evidence, and consistent statements from everyone involved. This was a clear abuse of power." Chief Williams nodded grimly. "Detective, I want you to forward all this evidence to the district attorney's office immediately. They need to decide whether criminal charges should be filed." Dr. Richardson was amazed by how quickly everything was moving. In most cases she had heard about, it took weeks or months for any action to be taken. But here, within hours of the incident, the officer had been fired and the case was being referred for potential criminal prosecution. Michael Richardson was equally impressed. "Chief Williams, I have to say that your department's response has been exemplary. This is how these situations should be handled." "Mr. Richardson, this is how they will be handled from now on," Chief Williams replied firmly. "We have zero tolerance for this kind of behavior." The chief then made an announcement that surprised everyone in the store. "I'm going to hold a press conference right here, outside this store, in 30 minutes. The community needs to hear directly from us about what happened and what we're doing about it." News crews were already starting to arrive in the parking lot. Word had spread quickly through social media, and local television stations were setting up their cameras. This story was becoming bigger than anyone had expected. Dr. Richardson looked out the window and saw the growing crowd of reporters and cameras. "Michael, I don't know if I'm ready for all this attention," she said nervously. "You don't have to say anything if you don't want to," her husband assured her. "But if you do decide to speak, I'll be right there with you." Captain Mitchell approached them again. "Dr. Richardson, the media is going to want to hear from you, but please know that you're under no obligation to speak to them. We can handle this without putting you in the spotlight if that's what you prefer." Dr. Richardson thought about all the other people who might face similar situations in the future. She thought about other families who might be affected by inappropriate police behavior. She realized that her voice could make a difference. "I think I should speak," she decided, "not just for myself, but for everyone who has experienced something like this and didn't get justice. Chief Williams was busy preparing for the press conference when she received a call that would add another layer to the story. The police union representative was calling to discuss Manning's termination. Everyone expected the union to defend Manning and challenge his firing, as unions often do in cases involving police misconduct. But after reviewing the evidence, including the clear video footage of Manning drawing his weapon on an innocent customer, the union made a surprising decision. "Chief Williams," the union representative said over the phone, "we've reviewed the evidence in the Manning case. The union will not be challenging his termination. His actions were indefensible and contrary to professional law enforcement standards." This decision sent shockwaves through everyone involved in the case. Even the police union, which typically defended officers regardless of the circumstances, was refusing to support Manning's actions. It was unprecedented and showed just how clear-cut this case really was. Chief Williams shared this news with Captain Mitchell and Dr. Richardson. "The union has decided not to contest the termination," she announced. "They agree that Manning's behavior was unacceptable." The press conference was about to begin, and the parking lot was filled with reporters, cameras, and community members who had come to hear what the police department had to say. This was a moment that would define how the community viewed their local law enforcement for years to come. 3 weeks had passed since the incident at Henderson's grocery, and the story had become national news. Videos of the confrontation and Captain Mitchell's immediate response had been viewed millions of times online. People across the country were talking about what had happened and praising the swift action taken by the police department. Dr. Richardson sat in her living room, reading the morning newspaper with her husband Michael. The headline read, "Former officer faces criminal charges." She still couldn't believe how quickly everything had moved forward. "It says here that Manning is being charged with assault, brandishing a weapon, and violating civil rights," Michael said, reading over her shoulder. "The district attorney's office says they have enough evidence to pursue all charges." Dr. Richardson nodded, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. She was glad that justice was being served, but she also felt sorry for Manning's family. His wife and children were now dealing with the consequences of his actions, and that wasn't easy for anyone. The doorbell rang, interrupting her thoughts. Michael went to answer it and found a reporter from the local television station standing on their front porch. "Mr. Richardson, I'm Jennifer Walsh from Channel 7 News," the reporter said. "I was wondering if Dr. Richardson would be willing to do an interview about the changes that have happened in the police department since the incident." Michael looked back at his wife, who nodded. Over the past 3 weeks, she had given several interviews, always focusing on the positive changes that were coming from her difficult experience. They sat down in the living room, and the reporter set up her camera. "Dr. Richardson, it's been 3 weeks since the incident at the grocery store. How has your life changed since then?" "Well, it's been overwhelming in many ways," Dr. Richardson replied honestly. "I never expected to be in the public eye like this. But if my experience can help make positive changes, then I'm grateful for that opportunity." "What kind of changes have you seen in the police department?" the reporter asked. Dr. Richardson smiled slightly. "Chief Williams has been amazing. She's implemented new training programs, created a community oversight committee, and established a zero-tolerance policy for discriminatory behavior. The department is really trying to rebuild trust with the community." What Dr. Richardson didn't mention in the interview was how the incident had affected her personally. She still felt nervous when she went grocery shopping, and she had started shopping at different times to avoid crowds. Her children had heard about what happened from their friends at school, and she had to explain to them why someone would treat their mother that way. But there were positive changes too. The local hospital had invited her to speak at their diversity training seminars. Other healthcare workers had reached out to share their own experiences with discrimination. She was becoming a voice for people who had similar encounters but didn't have the platform to speak about them. Meanwhile, at the police station, things were changing rapidly. Chief Williams had promoted Sergeant Santos to lieutenant and put her in charge of a new community relations and bias prevention unit. This was exactly the kind of role that Lieutenant Santos had been hoping for throughout her career. "Lieutenant Santos, How is the new unit coming along? Chief Williams asked during their weekly meeting. Chief, we've already trained 50 officers in cultural competency and de-escalation techniques, Lieutenant Santos reported. The feedback has been very positive. Officers are telling us that the training is helping them handle difficult situations better. The new training programs were comprehensive. Officers learned about unconscious bias, community engagement, and proper procedures for interacting with citizens. They practiced scenarios and discussed real-life situations. Most importantly, they learned that their job was to serve and protect everyone in the community, regardless of background. Officer Chen, who had been at the grocery store during the incident, was one of the first officers to go through the new training. The training really opened my eyes, he told his colleagues. It made me think about how my actions might be perceived by different people in the community. The changes weren't just happening within the police department. The grocery store where the incident occurred had become a symbol of positive change. Patricia, the store manager, had worked with community leaders to organize monthly meetings where residents could talk directly with police officers in a relaxed setting. These community meetings have been wonderful, Patricia told Chief Williams during one of the gatherings. People are getting to know the officers as real people, and the officers are learning about the concerns of community members. Dr. Richardson attended one of these meetings 6 weeks after the incident. She was nervous about returning to the store, but she wanted to support the positive changes that were happening. Dr. Richardson, thank you for coming tonight, Chief, Williams said as she welcomed her to the meeting. Your courage in speaking out has inspired these changes. The meeting was held in the store's community room, and about 30 people attended. Officers sat next to community members, sharing coffee and cookies while discussing local issues and concerns. One elderly woman raised her hand. Officer, I want to thank you all for the changes you've made. I feel much more comfortable approaching police officers now that I've gotten to know some of you personally. A young father spoke up next. My son asks me about police officers all the time now. It's nice to be able to tell him about the good work you do in our community. Dr. Richardson listened to the conversations and felt hopeful about the future. The incident that had been so traumatic for her was leading to real improvements in how police and community members interacted with each other. 2 months after the incident, Manning's trial began. Dr. Richardson had to testify about what happened that day in the grocery store. She was nervous about facing Manning in court, but she knew her testimony was important. Dr. Richardson, please tell the court what happened on the morning of the incident, the prosecutor asked. She described the events clearly and calmly, just as she had that day in the store. She explained how she was simply shopping for groceries when Manning approached her aggressively and eventually drew his weapon. How did you feel when the defendant pointed his gun at you? The prosecutor continued. I was terrified, Dr. Richardson answered honestly. I kept thinking about my children at home and whether I would see them again. I couldn't understand why someone would treat me that way when I was just buying milk and vegetables. The defense attorney tried to argue that Manning had been doing his job and that he perceived a threat, but the evidence was overwhelming. The security footage, witness statements, and multiple phone recordings all told the same story. After 3 days of testimony, the jury deliberated for only 2 hours before reaching their verdict. Manning was found guilty on all charges. He was sentenced to 2 years in prison plus community service at organizations that work to improve police-community relations. Dr. Richardson felt a sense of closure when she heard the verdict. Justice had been served, but more importantly, the incident had led to positive changes that would benefit the entire community. 6 months after the incident, Chief Williams received an award from the National Association of Police Chiefs for her department's response and the reforms they had implemented. In her acceptance speech, she talked about the importance of accountability and community trust. Real change happens when we admit our mistakes and work to fix them, Chief Williams said. The incident in our community was terrible, but it became an opportunity for us to become better. The police department had become a model for other departments across the country. Law enforcement agencies were sending representatives to learn about their training programs and community engagement strategies. Lieutenant Santos was invited to speak at a national conference about police reform. The key is building relationships with community members before problems arise, she told the audience of police chiefs and community leaders. When people trust you, they're more willing to work with you to solve problems. Dr. Richardson's life had settled into a new normal. She still worked at the hospital, still shopped for groceries, and still took care of her family. But now she also spoke at conferences and training sessions, sharing her story and advocating for positive police reform. 1 year after the incident, she returned to Henderson's Grocery for a special ceremony. The store was dedicating a community room to promoting understanding between police and citizens. A plaque was installed that read, "Dedicated to building bridges of trust and understanding in our community." As Dr. Richardson stood in the same produce section where the incident had occurred, she was approached by a young police officer she didn't recognize. "Dr. Richardson, I'm Officer Rachel Torres," the young woman said. "I graduated from the police academy 6 months ago, and your story was part of our training. I wanted to thank you for helping to make our department better." Dr. Richardson smiled and shook the officer's hand. "Officer Torres, I'm glad that something positive came from what happened. I hope you have a long and successful career serving this community." As she left the store that day, Dr. Richardson reflected on how much had changed in just 1 year. A terrible incident had become the catalyst for meaningful reform. The community was stronger, the police department was more accountable, and relationships between officers and citizens had improved dramatically. Her children, now a year older, understood better what had happened to their mother and why it was important. They were proud of her for speaking out and helping to make their community safer for everyone. The grocery store where it all began was now a symbol of positive change, hosting regular community meetings and serving as an example of how people can come together to solve problems. Dr. Richardson continued to shop there regularly, greeted warmly by store employees and community police officers who had become familiar faces in the neighborhood. The incident that started as a nightmare had transformed into a story of hope, showing that real change is possible when people are willing to stand up for what's right and work together to build a better future for everyone.